Hey everyone, this is a basic Google Sheets video. We're doing a training for our district, and so figured we'd make a video to go with it, showing how to use this. So first thing is just going over some of the terms. We have columns, so there's a column. We have rows. We have cells, so an individual, this is called a cell. And within the cell, every cell has a name. So like this cell I'm on right now is B2. If I go down to this cell would be D9. So every cell has a name. And then in it, the cells, I'm putting a value in here. So like this cell has a value of 3. And I can end up doing things with the cells. Like if I wanted to take all these and get a sum of those numbers, it will create an equation or formula, and it will give me a number. So the value in the cell is a 14, but the formula I can actually see up here. This is called the function or formula bar, and that tells me how I am getting to this number because it's taking the sum of the cells from B2 to G2. And if I look at B2 to G2, that's a range. So I'm going to delete that for right now. All right, so those are some basic terms. Let me now go over some of the things you can do within the sheet. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to insert a column. So I'm going to right click. So actually I have two options. I can right click up here or go to this down arrow, and I'm going to insert a column right. And I'll show you why in a minute I'm doing that. And you can do that with rows as well. Let's say in this data example, like you forgot a student, you can right click and insert a row above or below. I'll put below for now. And then let's say I don't want that. That was a mistake. I can either go up here to undo, or I can right click and delete the row. So the reason why I created an additional column here is sometimes if you import student names from a student information system or somewhere else, you'll get first and last names like this, but you might want to end up sorting by just last name. So, and there might be a different way to do this, but one way I know how to do this is if I actually just copy these names, and I paste them again, down here, this option will come up, and I can actually split the text to different columns, and I can tell it how I want it to split. So sometimes I know when import data, it's just by a comma. This time I have a space, so I'm going to split this column by the space. And now I have the first and last name, so it will be easier for me to sort later. So once again, how I did that is I had to copy the names and then paste them just in the same spot. All right, so when I do that, it gives me now my first and last name. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna freeze some of the rows. So let's see here, actually if I go up to view and then freeze row 1, the reason why I would do that is if I had more on this, I have 20 names, but if I had more and wanted to scroll, I'd want to know what the data is referencing. Same thing with the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to freeze. I'm going to freeze the first two columns. That way, once again, if I had more test scores on here, I can see which student that test score is going with. So freezing the rows and columns is really helpful. Let's say I get data and it's scrunched like this and I can't see what this is. You have two options. You can double click and it will go to the end of the text, or sometimes I know where you don't, up here might be some long word or name and you don't want that, is I can actually click on this, go up here, and I can wrap my text. So that way the column doesn't get super expanded. It just wraps whatever text is in there. So a couple options. Once again, you can wrap text, or if I unwrap text, I can double click and it will just go, show the full name. So the next thing I'm going to show you is if you wanted to duplicate the sheet. So actually I'm going to rename this sheet. If I just click on this down arrow, I can rename it, and I'll just call this math scores. Or actually we'll call it all math scores. And then if I click on this arrow, I can duplicate the sheet. And when it does that, it will take all the same data, just put it on a new sheet. And so here I have it. And the reason why I might do that is if you look up here on my test, I have, I have equations and expressions and equations scores. I have number system scores. So this is probably, I think it's, middle school test score. So if I have this, and I might want to only have the data, so I'm going to rename this, and I just want the expressions and equations scores. Or you might do it where if like all your students were in here and you want to separate it by different class periods or different subjects, you could do that as well. So then what I can do, if I don't want these number system scores, is I can click here and delete the column. And once again, I can delete all these. So I can go here, delete, and I could have selected multiple, went one by one here, but delete column. So now it just has these scores. And then I can still go back here to see all my scores. Now when I go back to all my scores, so sometimes if I do want all the data, I'm not going to calculate with it, but I just want to hide it so I can see. I can always click up here and I can hide the column. So if I hide the column, it's still there. These arrows will pop up, but I can't see it. So maybe I just want to look at the data and get rid of those without deleting it. Just hide, you can just hide it. Then if I want it to show back up, I can click that and it will show back up again. So then the next thing is, let's say with this data, I don't like this font. I can click on an individual cell to change the font. So let's say I want it to be Georgia, and that's fine. Or if you ever click on this box, it will select everything, and I can change the font for all of it. Then the other thing I know is helpful for a lot of people is sometimes you just want to have this as a different color. I can go to the fill bucket and let's say I'm going to make it light blue, and we'll go like that. And then when you select here, it will change the color for that whole row. Or if I select here, it will change the color for the whole column. All right, so let me show you. Let's say you're going to look at all these and you really want to sort. So I want to know who has a 1 or a 4. So if I click on the column and I go to sort sheet A to Z, I can then see the scores in order, or I can also go the opposite. And so if I go down to sort Z to A, it does that. And if you look, it did, so like Isabella here had a 4. If I go to sort the other way, Isabella, her 4 goes with her. So one way to sort data. Another thing you can do with data is what's called conditional formatting. And this is really helpful for teachers that you want to pop up. So let's say I want anyone that has a 1 or 2 to be read. So if I go up here, I'm going to select them all. And then I have a couple ways to do this. I can go to data and then format, and then conditional formatting. And what I can do is for any cell, so it's over here, any cell that contains, so if it contains a value of 1, I can have it pop up with a red. I'm going to do a lighter red just so, and I did that wrong. See, and so I did the text as red, and really I wanted to do the fill bucket with red. Now also if you look up here, because I selected them all, these have 1s in them as well. So what I'm actually going to do is I don't want A1, I want B1. Because I want to start, sorry, not A1, I want it to start not in row 1, so I actually want to leave A. And I want to start in row 2. I want to start in row 2, not row 1. So there you go. So I have that as red. And then maybe I want my 2s. So I'm going to add a new rule. I want, if the cell contains a 2, I want the color, change it to whatever color you want. We'll go yellow for now. Oops, and once again I did the same mistake. So leave that as black. And we will make that, so we're gonna make it yellow. And so once again, it just pops the data more. So then the next thing I can show you is, sometimes if you wanted just a quick, get rid of this, average. And averaging is definitely not the best way to look at test scores because obviously this kid's improved. But I'll just still show you. So if I take all this data and I go up here to the functions, I can get a sum, an average, a count, a maximum, or a minimum. Let's say I'm going to just get the average for right now, and I can hit enter. And by doing that, it'll show me the average of all their math scores. What's cool too is if I take the corner here and I drag it down, it'll take the same formula and apply it all the way down. Now let's say instead of average, I actually want to find the mode. I want to see what's coming up the most. Is instead of average, if I put the word mode, it'll give me the mode here, and I do need to re-drag this, and it'll show me what the mode is. So I type up here the mode. Now what I just did here is once again, I went to my formula bar, changed the formula. You can average sum, like I said, you have all sorts of different options there. You can subtract, multiply, divide. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this for right now. And once again, I can right click or click on the down arrow. And so if I delete that column, and let's say I want to take this data, actually I'll show you. So if I highlight all this data, let me get all of this. There we go. So now I'll explore. Tell me the minimum score, the maximum score, the average, what the sum of all of them are. So Explore gives you a lot of information very quickly. The other thing you can do is turn this into a graph. So you have a couple ways of doing that. So if I take this data, all right, so next let me show you how to create a chart or graph from the data. So also I'm realizing that this is still yellow. So when I go to, when I go to format, conditional formatting, when I go to this one that's yellow, once again, I want this to start not on A1, I want to start 2, and that will take care of that. So you can always fix your conditional formatting and just delete that rule. All right, so let's say I want to see a graph, whether it's a bar graph or pie chart, for this data right here. I want to take this and make it more visual. So I select that column, and I can go to Insert Chart. When this comes up, it can give me some different ways to show the data. Right now it's giving me a line chart. I'm going to go up and change that. So let's say I want it in a pie graph, and I want to aggregate the data. So now what it will show me is how many students got a 4, 25%, how many got a 2, how many got a 1, how many got a 3. So I can do it that way. I can also change it from a pie chart to a bar graph. And so right now it looks, that's not the way I want it to look. So I'm going to go up here, change that to that. And so it gives me a bar graph of the data. And so just different ways to visualize the data, whether it's for yourself or for students. I can go up here and I can save the image. I can move it to its own sheet, a couple of different options. So, and I can rename this. So we'll call this, what are we got here? So number systems chart. So that way it's on its own thing. So I'm going to go back to my math scores. So once again, to insert chart, select the data you want, go to insert and then chart, and then in there you can play with the different charts. One other thing I'll show you that has been helpful for teachers is sometimes you want to merge cells. So let's say you wanted these two to be together for whatever reason. So you go up here and you can actually merge, and then it will create just one block there rather than two. and you can always unmerge it as well. So once again, went over how to split a list of names, freezing rows, freezing columns, wrapping text, insert a row or column. A lot of basics here, and hopefully that was helpful.